Peter.
There we are.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call Rotary meeting to order. So this morning, Gary Greiser is going to lead us off in prayer.
Sorry, Peter, I was reminiscing with Dennis about the Reds game from yesterday. It was exciting.
Yes.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for the gift of life, and we thank you for the privilege that we have to be of service in this organization. Thank you for Rotary and all that Rotary stands for and does. Thank you for our speaker today. I pray that you would bless her in the work that she does and assist her as she presents to us today. Bless this club, bless Rotary, then be with us and as we continue to deal with this pandemic, and thank you for the relief that we are experiencing now from the severity of that pandemic. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Gary. All right, now please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next, the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right, thank you. So I have the privilege today of giving Gary Greiser an award. Hopefully everybody knows that Paul Harris was the founding member of the Rotary Club. And everyone that makes donations to the Paul Harris Fellowship becomes a fellow. And today I'm happy to give Gary his level 5 badge.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. All right, Sean Carroll's in the house somewhere. Did he disappear? Oh, here he comes. So you got didn't recognize your sport coat on there.
Just happened to bring a little news today. The Reds have won 6 of the last 7, and that is incredible. And they beat the Cardinals 4 in a row. My kid wasn't alive the last time that happened. I know Don Boland's Cubs do that all the time, but the Reds do not do that. So it's an awesome day. And this is an awesome team because they have all kinds of injuries. People on the disabled list. The regular second baseman. I saw him out at Pendry Park with this kid at a T-ball game. They're busy. Those other guys are busy, but the Reds are all patchwork and good things are happening. So that's a crazy moment. And Adam, the tribute to you. I can fill you in on the sports. Thanks for coming out of the woods. There's still some dead deer out on 275. Don't know why you hunt if you can catch them out there. But anyway, and the Bengals have signed all their draft choices, and that's looking really good, promising. The pundits are saying that the Bengals are going to be incredibly good. I'm not sure what pundit means, but I think it means that they can say whatever they want, and then we're supposed to forget it. So that's a good thing. And then high school baseball, we have Cuff Cath at Beechwood tonight, and we have the Boone County Lady Rebels are taking on Notre Dame Academy in the regional softball. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Sean.
All righty.
Dave Wolford, you want to come on up? We'll just have one announcement from Dave and then we'll get to our speaker.
Thank you, Peter. So for the next 3 Mondays, we're going to offer as a lunch option, lunches at Substation 2. I did a test run. I ordered last night about 9:30, picked it up today. The website, Julie just sent it out. It's called www.substationii.com. It is so easy to order whatever sandwich you want with all the fixins. Just make sure you mark it there for an 11:15 pickup on Monday morning and mark it that Dave Wolfer will pick it up. And I got mine. It was easy as all get out. So we'll be offering that for the next 3 Mondays in June. And that way you don't have to bring pizza.
Thanks, Dave. All right, so today Don Vollin's going to introduce our speaker.
Okay, so I know a lot of times we try to have speakers that kind of give us a warm and fuzzy feeling as we leave, and today I don't think that's going to happen. This is going to be, we're going to talk today about something that's a very real problem in the world around us, something that we don't pay a lot of attention to, and we probably do need pay a lot of attention to it. But today we have Jordan Turner, who's local. She grew up here in Boone County, went to Northern Kentucky University and graduated summa cum laude, and graduated from Chase College of Law, magna cum laude. Did I get those in the right order? Okay, but anyway, she's had a lot of experience working in Southeast Kentucky and with human trafficking cases, and also in Washington, D.C. And she's agreed to come share some of the information with us today. So please give a warm welcome to Jordan.
There we go. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of off for some reason. It's like off on.
Just the slides. Yeah, we can do that.
And let me move. There we go. I think we got it. Okay, I think you're good.
So I guess I just push the arrows.
Yeah, you can just do the arrows back. Okay. That should work.
Okay, I'm clearly not here to talk about technology. So bear with me here. Okay. So my name is Jordan Turner. I'm an attorney here in Northern Kentucky. My husband and I are actually in practice together. We have a practice in Florence. Our primary practice is representing folks who have been injured in any number of capacities. But thankfully, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Before I entered the thrilling world of chasing ambulances, as we like to laugh about, I had the privilege of working with quite a few victims. I had the privilege of working for an organization that I really just wanted to share a little bit more about. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. After I graduated from law school, I had the opportunity to work for an organization called International Justice Mission. It's headquartered in Washington, D.C. It's a global 501c3 organization, and I'm going to share a little bit. What I want to do is I'm going to share a little bit about the organization with you, and then I want to talk about some things that I learned when I worked there, and then I want to end by kind of sharing what we can do.
A little bit
Yes.
closer there
Yeah.
to the mic.
To the mic? Okay,
Yes.
sure. That's all right. That's all right. So the mission of International Justice Mission is to partner with local justice systems to end violence against people living in poverty. This is their mission statement. They are made up of teams of attorneys, investigators, social workers, community activists, and other professionals. They work in local teams. They partner together to take on cases of violent abuse and oppression against the poor. And I'll touch on this in just a minute, but 94% of these folks are nationals of the countries in which they're working. So when we talk about protecting the vulnerable from violence, these are the types of cases that the organization takes on. They take on cases of sex trafficking, cyber sex trafficking, property grabbing. That's something I think a lot of people don't really understand. In many places in the world where we don't see the rule of law, if the male head of household passes away before the female, many places in the world do not consider women to have property rights. And so a lot of times you unfortunately see the deceased male's family come in and basically kick the female out, kick the kids out. And a lot of times they have help from the government. So IJM takes on those particular kinds of cases. IJM takes on domestic servitude cases, forced labor cases. Bonded labor is also something I think a lot of people are not familiar with. In other parts of the world, people get into a tough spot financially and they take out a loan from a lender who is, for lack of a better word, pretty oppressive. The terms of the loan repayment are incredibly oppressive, such that the person essentially is never even able to pay off the loan. And they end up having to go into a form of indentured servitude to ever, quote unquote, repay the loan while they're serving out the terms of their indentured servitude. More fees and lump sums are being tacked onto the loan. So they're never able to pay the loan off. That's another type of case that IJM works on. Situations of child labor, and then certainly cases involving the sexual assault of children. So IJM was started in the 90s by an attorney named Gary Haugen. He was an attorney with the Justice Department. He was a human rights attorney, just brilliant, top scholar. He was placed in charge of the Justice Department's investigation into the Rwandan genocide. And you know, what he saw and experienced in Rwanda in those years following really impacted him and kind of put a vision in him of an organization which leverages the resources, the training, the experience of folks in the criminal justice system to keep these kinds of things from ever happening again. So IJM was founded in 1997. It's a faith-based organization. The first field office was started in 2000 in Mumbai, India, which is on the kind of in the middle, the central western coast of India. So that was where the very first field office was. Today, here's a map of today. The IJM headquarters, the global headquarters, is located in Washington, but they have field offices in every continent except Antarctica. They have field offices. All of the little colored blocks are places where they have field offices. The field offices are places where IJM has active investigations, is actively working to combat violent oppressive situations. They also have advancement offices in Australia, Canada, Germany, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, and the United States. Those are more places where those offices do more like raising awareness, raising funds, advocating, that sort of thing. Today, there are 750 attorneys, social workers, and law enforcement personnel that work for International Justice Mission. And like I said, 94% of those people are nationals of all of these countries. So the vast majority of folks that work for International Justice Mission are not United States citizens. So when we talk about the mission to transform the justice system, I mean, that's a pretty big mission. How do you go about doing that? The very first priority of the organization is always to rescue victims out of oppressive situations. That's always the priority. A close second is to restore the victims to wholeness and to help them transition back into normal, functioning society. After you experience such a traumatic event, you are faced with some pretty significant needs. And IJM has a whole department devoted toward providing the aftercare necessary for these folks to be able to transition back into society. The third part of the system is obviously to restrain the perpetrators, to bring about justice in these communities where these things are happening. But really the root mission, the root under all of this is to totally repair these systems in third world countries so that we don't see this continuing to happen again and again. One last thing I want to touch on before we move on. I've mentioned this in passing. International Justice Mission was started as a faith-based organization, and it continues today as a faith-based organization. Their mission is really hinged on this verse in Isaiah 1:17, which says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow." And they really, that really forms the basis of everything they do. Something that was really impactful to me. So I spent a lot of time in youth ministry when I was in college and law school. And when I got out, I remember thinking, I had a huge passion for that, for investing in youth. But then I also had this law degree. How in the world are you ever going to find like a common ground for both of those things? I didn't think it existed. And when somebody introduced me to this organization, it was truly the jackpot for somebody like me, because it really allowed me to use my faith and my education and training in a way that I felt like I was really investing in people. When I worked for International Justice Mission globally, every single office begins the first 30 minutes of the day in what they call stillness. So the first 30 minutes of the workday, nobody is doing any work. It's complete quiet and stillness. You're encouraged to use that time to pray, to read scripture, to meditate, but you are to do no work. Those first 30 minutes are stillness time. Something else that was really impactful, again, every day at 11 o'clock, right before lunch, we would break again. And when I worked in Washington, there were probably 50 people in the office. So I mean, it's a pretty big operation in Washington. At 11 o'clock, we would break again and come together. We would kind of be informed about a variety of operations that were taking place that day, that week. And then we prayed together corporately as a group. So it really continues that faith-based foundation, which was something that was really important to me. The next thing I want to do, I just want to show a short video, and it doesn't look like it pulled it up. Let me see if it will show here. Okay. Do you think you'll need to? This is a video that International Justice Mission produced, and I think this is going to be a good example of one of the types of cases that they work on. Can you all hear that?
Yes, that sounds fine. Okay. We can send the link out. And then
Okay,
they could watch it.
okay,
Just send it to me.
okay. So the video, oh, now I'm echoing. Okay, we'll send the link out so you can watch the video. This is really, really powerful, and I would really encourage you all to watch the video. So that really kind of provides an overview of the organization. What I really wanted to share today is just some practical things that we can all be aware of, some things that I learned as a result of working there. My time there really opened my eyes, and I'd really like to share a couple things with you. So before we start just with some background information about human trafficking, I think we all need to kind of be on the same page about what we're talking about here. When we're talking about human trafficking, certainly most of us have heard about trafficking in narcotics. This is the same concept, but unfortunately we're talking about trafficking in people, which is really it's hard for me to wrap my mind around, and I've done this work for years. But we're talking about trafficking in people. Many times you will see this referred to quote unquote modern day slavery. A lot of organizations use that term. But our federal crime statute defines it as compelling or coercing someone to provide labor or services or to engage in commercial sex acts. Now, if the victim is a minor, there needs to be no force, no showing of compelling and coercing. If you are using a minor for commercial sex acts, you've met the requirements of the statute. So I want to share some international statistics. These are just a few to be aware of. Right now, there are 40+ million people who are victimized by human trafficking in the world. This is more people than ever before in human history. 71% of those people are women and girls, and 1 in 4 people who are trapped in trafficking situations are children. In some parts of the world, the majority of victims are children. The video that I was going to show was taken from the rescue of a little boy from a fishing camp in Western Africa. In Western Africa, that's a big business, trafficking children into the fishing industry. Almost 100% of victims in Western Africa are children who are trafficked into these fishing industries. It's estimated that only 0.04% of survivors are identified, which is just extremely troubling if we can only identify 0.04% of survivors. So, where exactly, let me go through this too. Human trafficking is considered one of the world's most profitable and fastest growing crimes because it generates $150 billion a year in profits. 2/3 of that is made from commercial sexual exploitation. So you can see why this is an incredibly lucrative criminal enterprise for folks who are engaged in this. Internationally, you see this kind of across the board in legal and illegal labor industries. The internet, obviously, just so many things take place on the internet. Brick kilns, brothels, fishing boats, tree cutting facilities, quarries, and mines. And when we talk about trafficking, this goes beyond a bad working environment, right? We're talking about people who are facing horrific daily abuse in their situations, and they can't get out. They can't leave. They can't go somewhere else. They can't do what needs to be done to take care of their families. They're truly trapped. the victims internationally, certainly folks who are living in poverty, who are vulnerable, those living in unsafe or unstable situations, those in search of a better life, and those who are in desperate need of employment. This, I think, is really significant. Who are the traffickers? In in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, 80% of the people convicted of trafficking are women, which I think is just, again, hard to wrap your mind around. Central America and East Asia convict equal numbers of males and females. You see many people with a criminal background using trafficking as an extra source of income. Certainly see a lot of business owners who take advantage of people, and you see parents. Okay. So that's internationally. Domestically, what are we looking at here? So in 2000, most of our country's justice department was not necessarily shut down, but we were really strapped in 2020 in the legal community. Federally, however, we still saw 210 federal trafficking cases against 337 defendants, and we still had 309 convictions of human trafficking in the United States. In 2021, oh, I skipped ahead. In 2021, we've seen several cases. We saw a life sentence for someone in Florida who was sex trafficking young kids from the Philippines. We've seen a conviction of a labor trafficker in North Carolina. We've seen a life sentence and almost $1 million in restitution in Texas. I reached out to some of our local federal prosecutors just to kind of get a feeling for what we're seeing in the United States. They said that, and this is really what I saw overseas as well, a lot of trafficking is going hand in hand with the drug trade right now. So sadly, you're seeing cartels really use it into one of two ways. They kind of see trafficking in humans kind of like a side hustle, a way to make extra money, but they're sadly also using children as a way to get drugs into other countries. And that's really what we're seeing in the United States. The victims, just a list of victims here in the United States. One that I really want to point out, individuals with substance use issues. This is sadly something that we're seeing locally. I think a lot of people who have substance abuse issues are vulnerable. They are very much at risk for being trafficked into situations where they're being rewarded with, their next load of drugs. And that's really something that we're seeing locally as well. Every year, the United States sees 50,000 people trafficked into our country. But again, another statistic that I think is really mind-blowing, 83% of all of the trafficking victims here in the United States are American citizens. So our folks here in the United States are being victimized as well. Again, in the United States, this is happening in legal and illegal labor industries, the internet, child and elder care, massage, hair, nail salons, restaurants, hotels, factories, farms, and folks who work domestically in homes. Now, here's something that I really wanted to hone in on. These are Kentucky specific statistics that I wanted to share. This is a document that's put out by something called the Polaris program. Polaris is a sister organization to International Justice Mission where I worked. Polaris operates the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and every year they put out these statewide bulletins that kind of give a snapshot of each state and how they're performing in terms of trafficking cases. There's a lot of information on this slide, and we're not going to go through it, but what I really wanted to hone in on, and it's kind of hard to see because it's small. There's a map in the center of the slide of Kentucky, and it's outlined in white. If you look on that map, where do you see the greatest concentration of trafficking activity in our state? I mean, it's here. If you look in Northern Kentucky, that has the highest concentration of trafficking activity. And this is from 2019. 2020 was not available yet when I put this together. But I think that's something we have to be aware of, is in Kentucky, we live in a place where the majority of cases are taking place. And I think that is really significant. I think that Kentucky is a location really conducive for these kinds of cases because we have several major interstates that go through Kentucky. We also have high profile events that bring a lot of people internationally to Kentucky, like the Derby. Those are always factors and locations where you see these types of things happening. Just some statewide statistics again, between 2008 and 2021, a Catholic Charities of Louisville program reported 332 victims had been identified in those years, and 60% were kids. A recent U of L study found 40% of homeless youth in Louisville identified with being a victim of sex trafficking. The last thing I wanted to be, and I'm not going to go through all these, I just did a quick Google search locally of human trafficking in the news. These are all of the news stories that pulled up. I don't want to talk about these. I don't know these people individually. You know, I don't want to make a statement about, I'm not making a statement about any of these cases, except to point out, this is happening here. That the very bottom, in Boone County 2 weeks ago, the Boone County grand jury indicted someone on human trafficking charges. This is happening here. I have a colleague who recently argued a case in front of the Kentucky Supreme Court. It involved Kentucky parents who had trafficked their children. We've seen a lot of this in the news. I think, again, I don't want to get into the weeds on this. Jeffrey Epstein is a name that we've heard a lot about in the news. I think that has brought a lot of awareness to human trafficking situations. This is absolutely happening in our country, and it is, you know, it's time for us to be aware of this. Local prosecutors, I talked to local prosecutors to prepare for this. They said that they are absolutely seeing what we're seeing on the national level, which is human trafficking goes hand in hand with the drug trade. So the last thing I want to talk about, you know, what can we do? I mean, this was a lot of information. You know, we're talking about $150 billion a year industry. I mean, how in the world can we ever make a dent? I mean, I feel like that. It would be so much easier to just go home and do not. I mean, it really gets overwhelming. So I want to end by just giving some practical options, some things that we can do. I think absolutely we have to be educated and aware. You know, so many of you all are in places, you work places, you're in industries where you could be coming into contact with victims. You all are working, you're out, everybody in this room is very involved in the community. You're touching a lot of lives. I think it's critical to be aware and to know what we're dealing with, because you could certainly be a lifeline for someone. Our current Attorney General has really made human trafficking a priority for him. He has put out these posters. He's created an entire movement. It's called the Your Eyes Save Lives campaign. Right now, with his focus on human trafficking, we've in the last few years seen a lot of legislation in Kentucky that's really served to advocate for victims and to promote awareness. This type of poster is one of them. Law in Kentucky now requires posters just like this to be placed in a variety of public places. Again, this comes from the Attorney General's website, his Your Eyes Save Lives campaign website. These are some things to be aware of, some things to look out for when you're at work, when you're at church, when you're with, you know, as somebody who has young kids, I find this incredibly helpful to be aware of because I'm around a lot of other kids all the time. My kids are with other kids. I think it's incredibly important to be aware of some of the signs of folks who are trapped in these situations. And I won't go through all of this. I do want to mention I think it's critical right now for state agencies to really collaborate, law enforcement agencies. I think we really need to all collaborate and work together if we're ever going to make a dent. I think about schools. I think schools, among so many other things, they have such a key role, certainly in shaping the lives of kids. But think about how many kids come through school who could be stuck in these situations. And if we're just aware and have our eyes open, we could certainly make a difference in the life of a child who's trapped in this. Something that I'm really passionate about is going somewhere. I'm a firm believer that if you're physically able, everybody at just one point or another needs to take a trip to a third world country to see what other people live like, because we truly in the United States live in a place that is unlike most of the rest of the world. I think it is absolutely critical, if you're able, to go to a third world country, get your boots on the ground, see what it's like, because it's a little easier to understand how these kind of things can happen. There's a cameo in this picture. If you look in the front row, a lovely bald head of someone that many of you might know in this room. I had the opportunity right after my internship ended. We won't point out who it is. I had the opportunity, I got to go to Ghana. I got to go to Western Africa right after my internship ended. And that was really significant because the video that we're gonna shoot out that you can watch shows a young boy who was trapped in a fishing camp in Ghana. And that was a case that I worked on. And, getting to then leave and actually go to Ghana and drive through the country and to see what it's like there, you really have a greater appreciation for what folks go through. This is just a quick map. This isn't going to make sense because we weren't able to show the video. But there's just a massive lake that runs through the middle of the country of Ghana. There are literally thousands of children who are enslaved in fishing camps around this lake. I was able to go with Master Provisions to Ghana. We flew into the southern coast, into the capital, Accra, and we took a bus trip up through the center of the country. And gosh, you really do begin to see how things happen in other places. So I cannot stress that enough. It really that was, 11 years ago. And it's still, my trip to Western Africa still has such an impact on me, even now. I cannot stress that enough. Obviously giving, and there's so many organizations that do wonderful things. I just happen to have worked for International Justice Mission, and I can vouch for them and what they do and how upright they are. One thing that they do, which I think is really neat and helpful, they kind of break down what your funds can go to if you donate to them. So again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but let's say you're able to get 10 people to donate $11 each, $11. That would provide aftercare services for one family who's been rescued from a trafficking situation. So, you really can make a difference. You really can make a difference. In 2020, this is what folks who donated to International Justice Mission in 2020, this is what they were able to do with their money. They rescued 8,600 victims. They restored 526 people into aftercare situations. They were able to restrain 927 criminals, and they convicted 437 perpetrators. That's pretty amazing in the span of 1 year. Advocate. And this kind of falls into two camps. And this is something that I really want to hone in on, and I'm almost done here. Just hang with me. I think everybody in this room could certainly advocate for legislation that protects and defends vulnerable people. What does that look like? So Like I said, our Attorney General has done just a really good job of raising awareness. This has been a priority for him. In 2020, our General Assembly passed this legislation, which really kind of arms prosecutors with more teeth to go after folks who are committing these crimes. They also created this statute, which requires people convicted of trafficking to pay into a fund that goes toward raising more awareness. This legislation also included a requirement for a variety of public places to post that poster that we showed with the National Human Trafficking Hotline number. Some other legislation that I think is really interesting. We're really seeing kind of a paradigm shift, especially in Kentucky, away from the victims, the workers. For a time, I was a state prosecutor about 10 years ago. We were really involved in prosecuting people who were quote unquote the workers, burning up the prostitution statutes. I think the paradigm now is shifting. We want to go after the people who are putting those workers in those situations. So 2 ways I think that we're protecting victims. These are just 2 examples, 2 statutes. The first allows someone who's charged or convicted with an offense that's not a violent crime. If he or she can show that her participation in the offense was a direct result of being a victim of trafficking, they can completely move to expunge any record of that offense. And that second statute is very similar. Someone who is charged with an offense can assert that they were being victimized by human trafficking as a direct affirmative defense to the charge. Now, hang with me because I'm almost done. I know that this is a lot. Here's where I think that we have some work to do. And I think that this is where we could really advocate for some change. This is almost identical to the federal statute. At the bottom, you see the penalties if you are convicted of this crime. You can be convicted of a Class C, Class B, Class A felonies. Each of those classes are associated with a certain number of years in the penitentiary. So if you're convicted of a Class C felony that's highlighted, you're looking at 5 to 10 years. If you are convicted of human trafficking involving a victim under 18, you're looking at a Class B. And then it continues to bump up if you've got someone who sustained serious physical injury. And then certainly the most serious is if you've got a victim who's under 18 who sustained serious physical injury. Now hang with me. Here's where I think we could really advocate for some change. I think something that the public, just in general, is not completely aware of is in Kentucky, if you're convicted of a crime and you are sentenced to a certain number of years, if you are not considered a quote unquote violent offender, you are eligible for parole after serving approximately 20% of your sentence. So that means, let's say, for an example, if you are convicted of felony theft, that's a Class D felony. That's 1 to 5 years. Let's say that you're sentenced to 5 years. You're eligible to ask for parole after you serve 1 year. Now, certain crimes do not fall under that threshold if they're considered quote unquote violent crimes. So certainly murder, most felony sex crimes, you are not eligible for parole until you serve 85% of the sentence. Here's where I think we need some work. Based on my research, if you are convicted of human trafficking and you receive a Class C felony sentence, which I highlighted, you could be eligible for parole and you could be paroled out of the system after just serving 20% of the sentence. I certainly think that we need to see some change there. I can think of no crime that truly, takes away someone's human dignity than trafficking. We're treating somebody as an object. I think we could absolutely see some change in this part of the statute where we're talking about parole eligibility. A second part of advocating for human trafficking victims, is asking Congress to maintain funding in foreign aid programs to end slavery. So most of you all are aware, Congress goes through the appropriations process every year where it comes up with its budget. Less than 1% of Congress's budget is devoted to foreign aid, and a really small fraction of that 1% goes toward human trafficking endeavors. Many places in the world, people are simply not going to be rescued out of these situations without funding from the United States. I mean, that's just the reality. And these are two programs that absolutely do just so much overseas to protect victims. So just to kind of wrap all this up with a bow, I think another easy thing for all of us to do is simply to volunteer and to get involved. I threw this up here. I think we've all heard this many times before. I love this as a mom. I think this is a great quote as a mom for a mom of young kids like me. But just to close this out, I think when we talk about something so significant as human trafficking, $150 billion industry every year in the world, how on earth could just you ever make a difference? But I got to see when I worked in Washington for International Justice Mission, I got to see that I made a difference. This is kind of funny, but it's not. I was part of a group of 20 interns, and the other 19 interns got to do all this exciting stuff. They got to leave every day. They got to go to the Pentagon and give presentations. They got to film videos like the one that we weren't able to get up there. They got to do all this exciting stuff. I was the one who had just graduated from law school, and I got to sit in a cubicle every day and make phone calls. It was soul sucking. I mean, for months, I sat in this tiny cubicle, and my job was to call Germany and Australia every single day to try to get a hold of the person in Germany and Australia who was in charge of the German and Australia foreign aid programs, to ask if they would donate toward International Justice Mission. Like, oh my, talk about being on a hamster wheel every day. I mean, you have the time delay. Germany, you have the language delay. I would call over there. People would have no idea what I was asking. I'd have to leave a message, then I'd call back and get somebody. It was really frustrating. I left feeling like, gosh, I didn't do anything. I sat in a cubicle and just, spun my wheels, and I got nothing accomplished. But what was really significant is when I went to put this presentation together, and I pulled up the map of where International Justice Mission is operating now. 2 of those countries were Germany and Australia. 10 years ago, I was sitting in a cubicle thinking, gosh, I am just, I'm this fresh new attorney with a law degree, which is hilarious because most of you all know a fresh new attorney with a law degree is just a fresh new attorney with a law degree. They don't really have a whole lot to offer just yet till they get that experience. I was so eager to just, use all of my skills. And I remember leaving so down, feeling like I did nothing. And 10 years later, I'm putting together a PowerPoint, and what do you know? The two of the places on that map now are Germany and Australia. So, I would encourage you to volunteer because you certainly just don't know who you are in the process. You might be someone in the process who's just planting the seed. You might be the person in the process who's watering the seed. You might get to be the person who just gets to sit back and watch it grow. We all have a part. And I think the most important thing we can do is just to do something. Just do something. So I will end with IJM's website, and then that's my email address. If anyone has questions, if you would like more information, I would be more than happy to give that to you all. Yes.
Like what a person would see Trafficking. I don't recall where it was in the presentation. I thought maybe that would be helpful for us to kind of remind.
Oh, okay. Kind of the signs and yes. Yep. Let me find that. I think it's right here. Yep. Thank you all so much. This was really an honor. I have kind of admired you from afar. I do not feel like I am qualified to get up here and speak. I mean, I'm looking out at the crowd and you all are just an incredible group of folks. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Are there any more questions for Jordan? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jordan. That's quite an eye-opening experience. We obviously take a lot of things for granted. That helps get us back to reality. I learned that we have two guests today. Adam, would you like to introduce your guest?
This is our legal intern for the summer, Ashley Trafficking.
Hello. And Ashley, where are you going to school? Oh, very good. And Joe Bailey, did you have a guest? Okay, well, welcome. All right, well, next week we're going to have a presentation on the Free Radical Ranch. So, Dave, did you have a question? Or?
I do. I'm trying to plan a Florence Yellow get together next Thursday.
17th.
17th, correct. I'll get something out in the weekly newsletter, but people can put it on the counter. We'll probably buy a walk and tickets along with bases. Thursday, which is always a popular game, and 6:30 is the first pitch, so we'll get something out on that.
For those zooming in, we're going to have a Florence Rotary Night at the Florence Yalls on June 17th. So be on the lookout for an email from Dave Wolford, and there'll be more details. We believe game time's about 6:30. Okay. Anything else to get the cause?